So, an article featuring an interview with Neal Schon from back in July recently caught my attention, mostly because Neal Schon himself shared it on Facebook. So, I thought it was worth checking out this more recent interview from Neal regarding Steve Perry and about just the future in general. I thought it was fairly insightful. Neal Schon interviews can be hit or miss. Sometimes Neal comes off as a bit like paranoid when it comes to like the corporate side of the band, and I get that because these bands are basically corporations at this point. I mean, any classic rock band that has been around for 50 years is kind of to that point. So I get why Neal can be a little bit paranoid sometimes, but I thought this interview had some pretty good content. So let's check it out. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button down below. The community is continuing to grow. We crossed 270 subscribers. Absolutely incredible. All the videos are doing so well, and I absolutely appreciate the support. So if you want to join a growing community of not just Journey fans, but music fans in general, where we cover classic rock, 80s like synth pop and 80s rock and everything else really, please hit that subscribe button. And if you like the video, hit that thumbs up. It really helps the channel get noticed. So let's get to it. So in this interview, Neal talks about a few different things, but the main gist of the interview is that Neal says that he and Steve Perry are getting to know each other again. Now, I don't know how like one-sided or like legitimate this is, because sometimes just get the feeling that because Neal does a lot more interviews than Steve Perry does. Steve is a lot more private with these sorts of things. So we don't really know if, this is like a genuine connection between the two, or Neal's just kind of talking it up. Maybe it's from his perspective, they're getting to know each other. From Steve's perspective, Neal's annoying him. I don't know, but I thought overall it was a good tone from this conversation. So Neal, he talks about how he kind of reminisces about the past and when he and Steve first met, and he talks about kind of where they are together or where they are now. So he says in this interview, "We were very, very tight. We're talking and getting to know each other again, though not trying to get together musically again. But he's learning who I am now through a portion of our business that I'm kind of controlling now." And then Neal goes on to talk about how he's gained control of the Journey trademark. And he kind of, this I said earlier about the kind of the paranoia stuff. He gets into that a little bit. After all these years, many people lied to us. My wife and I finally got to the bottom of it after investigating for years. We were fought hard by everybody, but we managed to obtain the trademark. So I'm not going to read too much into that because the corporate side of these bands is so complicated, and it's so much of it goes on behind closed doors that it's just kind of pointless speculation, trying to figure out whether Neal's just like paranoid or whether he really did have to wrestle control from some entity. We don't know. We just know that the corporate side of these bands is very complicated. That is, you can just look at the dismissal of Ross Valerie and Steve Smith, that whole story. That tells you all you need to know just about how crazy these things are behind closed doors. Bands, when they first start, we have that wonderful image of these young guys getting together in like a garage and playing and creating all this incredible music. It's not like that for bands anymore. It gets really complicated really fast. And with a band like Journey, who's been around for just about 50 years, you can rest assured that there are a lot of hands in this. So that's not really the whole gist here. I don't really want to focus on that. What I do think is interesting, though, Neal talks about, I thought it was interesting that he specified they're not trying to get together musically again. They're just talking on a personal level. And, I had speculated in earlier videos that maybe we would see Steve Perry kind of maybe make a guest appearance during a potential 50th anniversary tour, that sort of thing. I think that's still possible. I don't think it's super likely. I never really thought it was likely. I think it's possible. Steve Perry will never make new music with Journey, so don't ever think that. It's not going to happen. If Journey continues making music, which that's not even guaranteed at this point, it will be with Arnell. But I think that for me personally, I would love to see Steve Perry kind of do like a guest slot during the 50th anniversary tour, but I just want these guys to be okay. I want them to be like on a friendly level. They've been through so much, through so many years, that I just think that at this point, I don't want them to reach that final stage of their lives with hate and bitterness. You know, nobody wants to go through that, and I don't want to see that from a band that means so much to me. Neal talks about memories that he had of Steve when they first met. He says, I have great memories of when Steve and I first met. We hung out all the time. We were like brothers. We were crazy. We spent a lot of nights out way too late doing things we shouldn't be doing, drinking and whatnot. But bottom line, we had a really good time for many, many years. Lots of enduring moments on stage and off stage. And I tell you what, you can see it. If you go back and look at some of these earlier like videos from a Journey, was like really big back in the 80s, like Budokan and 83 and stuff like that. You can see it. The chemistry in this band was great. I mean, you can totally tell when a band has bad chemistry on stage, and you can tell when a band has good chemistry on stage. Journey had great chemistry with that Escape era lineup. You can absolutely see it. All these guys just work so well together. I mean, especially like the Escape tour and the Frontiers tour. You can totally see it. So I completely believe him that they were absolutely all friends and they got along. And obviously, we know things got complicated. Raised on Radio is kind of when that tension started after Steve kind of took more control. But overall, these guys, it's pretty clear that, yes, there was a lot of chemistry between these guys. Neal also talks about how he kind of saw a glimmer of that come back with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction a few years ago. He said, I saw a fraction of a moment of it when we got together before the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. I managed to get into his room, which was locked down like Fort Knox, so we had a good hang in there. I felt like I still knew this guy and we were still really great friends. So that's really good to hear. And I feel like, again, you can kind of see that when you look at the stuff from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I feel like that while Steve Perry was a little bit out of place in that, just because he hadn't been with these guys in so long, you can totally see it. I don't think that there's a lot of hate or bitterness left between these guys, and I think that's great. And, you know, Neal talks about how he understood why Steve didn't want to perform at the ceremony and all that stuff, and, you know, I get that too. He didn't want to steal Arnell's spotlight, which just goes to show how good of a person Steve Perry can be. He didn't want to perform, you know, that could have been for personal reasons. Maybe he was not feeling up to it. Maybe he was worried about how he would do live because he hasn't performed a lot of Journey stuff live, like at all, in the past 30 years. So, you know, I think that it makes sense as to why he didn't perform, and I think it's, you know, Neal seems to understand that as well, so it's pretty cool there. And then the article just kind of goes on to talk about a previous interview that Neal did back in 2020, where he was talking about how he really wanted Steve Perry to perform live, like his solo stuff, Traces, when it came out in 2018. Don't know if you guys, I'm sure you guys remember Traces. That was a really big deal for Journey and Steve Perry fans. Is Steve Perry's big comeback to music after like a really long time away, like since Trial by Fire, really. So it was a really big deal when that dropped, and it was a pretty good album. Probably going to do a review on it at some point. But Steve never performed it live. He didn't do any like late night shows. He didn't do any touring. He didn't do residency. Kind of floated those ideas, but he didn't end up doing any of it. So Neal kind of talked about how he really wanted that to happen. He's been not out there for such a long time. I was happy to see him put out a solo record, and Signs said he was going to get back in it. I was behind him to do that, not for my own benefit, but for him and the fans. I think that's an important distinction for Neal to make. Sometimes there's this perception that Neal is like trying to rekindle this connection with Steve Perry so that he can use it for career purposes. And maybe that's true. We don't know. But he's stating pretty plainly here that he just wants to be friends with Steve Perry. And like I said, we don't actually know if that's true. Maybe he really does just want to use it for fame and career purposes. But I like to think that he really does just want to be friends with the guy. That's kind of what I'm choosing to accept. Because, you know, these guys are not going to be around forever. Let's just face it. It's hard to accept. But being fans of classic rock music means that we all know that these musicians that we love, that we have followed for most of our lives, that have had such an impact on us, they're not going to be around forever. And for a lot of them, that time is coming up soon. I don't want to see these guys in their lives hating each other. I don't want to see bitterness. We may never see them perform again, but I don't want to see them like not liking each other and just having that sort of bitterness. You don't want to have that as you grow older, especially with like Neal, Schon, and Steve Perry. They did so much together. They created so much music that really withstood the test of time. And you know, I want to see these guys just okay. And I think that as fans, we have all these like hopes and dreams that, oh, you know, they're going to get back together. Steve Perry's going to join the band. Or some people are like, oh, Steve Perry will never join. And it gets so like toxic sometimes. And really what we should want, because we already got all this incredible music from these guys. We got so many performances from these guys. It's okay to like hope that maybe Steve Perry will rejoin us for like a performance or something. But what we should really want is we should just want these guys to be happy and okay with each other on a personal level. I hope that this is all genuine and that Neal really does just want to rekindle a friendship with Steve Perry. I hope that that's true. I want to believe it's true. And I'm going to believe that it's true. Because, you know, we all have a limited time here, and it's just not, there's so much hate in the world already that we really don't need these old amazing musicians hating each other. And so many classic rock bands. I mean, there are so many classic rock bands that have this problem where over the years members have grown to really dislike each other. Some members have just been thrown out entirely. I mean, look at Styx and the whole situation with Styx and Dennis DeYoung. It's a very bitter situation. You've got that with a lot of other bands too. You've got that with Yes and John Anderson. I mean, so many groups. If these musicians can't perform together, that's fine. I just don't want to see them like actively hating each other and carrying all this bitterness. So, you know, I hope that it's true that Neal and Steve really are getting to know each other again. And I'm fine if it's not musically, if it's just on a personal level, because that's all I want for them. So, you know, I think Journey still has a pretty good amount of life in it. Neal is a very active musician. He's the kind of musician who is probably going to play music until he literally cannot. So whether we get more Neal solo stuff, whether we get a follow-up to Freedom, you know, we still have a lot to expect from Neal Schon, I think. So I just hope that personally these guys are able to work it out and carry on at some sort of like good personal friendship, you know, because they were apparently close back in the day. So, you know, it would be great to see that rekindled. But what do you guys think? Do you guys, you know, how do you feel about this? I thought this was just an interesting article to kind of look at. Some of these articles are kind of clickbaity and stuff like that, but I thought this was a kind of a decent interview. Not super like substantive, but I thought it, you know, had some good content in it. So I mean, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Neal and Steve Perry should rekindle a personal friendship? Do you hope that they do? Let me know in the comments. Let's try to keep it civil, of course. I know that sometimes these things get heated. That's not what Pixel Positive Music is about. We are here to discuss the music and the people around the music. But, you know, we're trying to keep it like cool here. You know, we don't want to get too crazy and too heated. I know these things get like that, but I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the discourse. So I definitely want to know what you guys think. Please leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't, hit that thumbs up, and I will see you guys at the next video.